Hi booktube, Aaron here. I hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to do the end of the year tag, which is I suppose something of an annual tradition. I think quite a few people tend to do it around this time of the year. As autumn is sort of moving towards winter, and we're probably panicking about books we feel we have to read before the end of the year, even though it doesn't really matter. But um, sometimes it's fun to think about it and to uh, weigh things up and see how things are going at this point in the year. And I was tagged to do this by Renee from The Left-Handed Reader. So thank you very much, Renee. And I believe it was originally created by Ariel Bassett. So I'll have sort of information on the original video and Renee's video down below. And there are only 6 prompts, so I'll try to be as swift as I can. The first prompt is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? And I think from when I've done this in the past, I always sort of question the word need, because really it doesn't really matter whether I finish them in, on December the 20th or January the 20th next year. As long as I'm reading the book and I enjoy it, then it's not really the end of the world. But there is one book that I would quite like to have finished by the end of the year, although I have an inkling that it might take a while to read, and there's a chance I might still be reading it early next year. And that's The House of Government by Yuri Slezkine. And I've showed this a few times in the last few weeks. I think I started it in September, maybe towards the end of September. And there are days when I spend a lot of time reading this, but most of the time I will just read a chapter here or there. And so I expect it will take me a while to read this. But I am really enjoying it, and it's interesting. I've not really read anything on the Russian Revolution before, and so there's a lot sort of milling around in my brain, and I'm sort of struggling to keep track of things. But in the preface, the author says that you don't really have to keep too much of a track of the names, and any characters that are important are going to show up again and again and again, and so you'll kind of recognize them. And it's really just kind of a big picture overview of the Russian Revolution, but using the House of Government, this apartment building in Moscow, to as a kind of centre point. So many of the people involved would have lived there. It was for party officials and their families. So it has been really interesting, and I'm hoping to finish it by the end of the year. But as I said, I started it in, I think, the end of September. I'm currently on page 454, and it's like it's like 1,000 pages. So I don't really know how long it will take, but we'll see how it goes. The second question is, do you have any autumnal books to transition to the end of the year? Not really. So I mean, in my head, it's always autumn. So although with like Victober and stuff, I suppose people sort of tends to think of Victorian literature as something kind of autumnal. But yeah, there's nothing particularly that I'll gravitate towards in autumn, I don't think. Number 3, is there a new release that you're still waiting for? And there are 3 that I'm kind of waiting for. There's not really much pressure on on any of them really. So 2 new releases that I'd quite like to pick up would be there's Homer and his Iliad by Robin Lane Fox, So I believe he's I think an Oxford classicist, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's essentially a culmination, I think, of his kind of lifelong relationship with the Iliad, and he's got a rather I don't know, kind of controversial view about Homer, that doesn't quite fit in with how quite a lot of other classicists at the moment would um, I don't know, say things happened. The next one is Emily Wilson's new translation of the Iliad. I really enjoyed her translation of the Odyssey, so I'd quite like to get that. But with both of those, there's no rush really. So I'll find them and I'll get to them, whenever I can. And then the last book I've got here is one where I'm interpreting the question slightly differently, and it's a new release that I've picked up and just haven't read yet. And again, actually, I probably won't be reading it this year, and I'll go into that in a bit. But it's the new translation by Michael R. Katz of The Brothers Karamazov. And I'll likely be reading this next year, actually, so I'll get back to this at some other point. Yeah, this is probably the one new release that I've got sitting around waiting to be read. And it's one of the few books that I've ever, maybe the first book that I've ever pre-ordered, so that was quite cool, at least for me. Number 4, name 3 books you want to read by the end of the year. So there's 2 books that I definitely want to read for Remember December, which is an event that I'm co-hosting in December, along with a wonderful group of other co-hosts. We've got Anne Novella and Elizabeth from Bookarns and Books. We've got Raoul, trying to say all my words at once. We've got Roz from Scallydandling About the Books. We have got Criminally, and we've got Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. And we're encouraging you to reread and encouraging ourselves to reread. And so there are 2 books I definitely want to get to for that. One of them is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and the other is The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington. The Hearing Trumpet is one that I didn't enjoy that much the first time around, and I'm hoping to come to it with a little more patience this time round. And since I already know what kind of happens in the book, I'm hoping to sort of notice some different things, and I won't be coming to it with any false expectations. So I'll see if I prefer it the second time round. Whereas with the Bell Jar, I really loved it the first time round, and so I'm hoping to enjoy it just as much the second time. So in a way, both of these are experiments, and we'll see how it goes. And then the other one, which is for another reading event, it's for Classics and Company, which is hosted by Anne Novella and Micah Cummins, and their pick for December is the thing they've been doing all year. But their pick for December is Anna Karenina, and it's a book I've been wanting to read for quite a while. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. And in fact, we'll actually be starting it sort of halfway through November, so it's only a week or so before I'll be starting this. So I'm quite excited to read this, and I'm sure I'll finish it by the end of the year. It took me about 6 weeks to read War and Peace, and War and Peace is a little bit bigger than Anna Karenina, and so I think I should quite easily finish it in that time. And then number 5 is, are there any books that could shock you and be your favourite of the year? I have a strong suspicion that many of the books that might be my favourite of the year are contenders for my favourite of the year. I've probably already read and have kind of recognised that that they might be my favourite. And I suppose Anna Karenina might end up being a favourite. I really loved War and Peace, so that's the only one that's in that kind of maybe category because I haven't read it yet, so we'll see how that goes. And then number 6, that the last prompt is, have you started making any reading plans for next year yet? And I do have some tentative plans. I'd probably from quite early this year had actually already made some plans for the beginning of next year. Whereas now I'm not too sure about them. I might be changing them and leaving things a little more open, just because life is probably going to be changing a bit at the beginning of next year. So I'm going to try and leave things a little more open and just see how things go. But I do have a few tentative plans, and so the one with the question mark on it is War and Peace. I'd quite like to reread War and Peace, and this was one of the things that I was hoping to read at the beginning of next year, whereas now I'm thinking, having, if I'm reading this at the beginning of 2024, having just read Anna Karenina, maybe I might want to space them out a bit more, so I might read this towards the end of next year, but we'll see how that goes. And also the Brothers Karamazov, I'm a little more sure that I might make this more of a priority than War and Peace, but they're both rereads, and so I'll just sort of go with my mood, I think. The other tentative plan I have is to read some more Canals Guard. So I started in, I think it was at the end of 2021, I read A Death in the Family, so the first in his My Struggle series, and I liked it and was fully intending to carry on. But then shortly after picking up the next book, I started reading Proust and didn't really feel like I could, you need quite a lot of headspace, I think, to be reading Proust and Canals Guard all at once. And so I just put Canals Guard to one side while I was reading Proust. So I expect I'll read A Man in Love at some point, and then after that I'm hoping to carry on and read the rest of the series, hopefully all next year, but we'll see how it goes. I'd really like to read some more sci-fi, so that's a kind of generic goal, really. At the moment, for most, the last couple of times I've been in bookshops, when I'm looking at fiction, I've been trying to kind of filter it a bit, and really focus on sci-fi when it comes to fiction, and because I've got tons of sort of classics and sort of literary fiction and stuff like that unread here that I can read. So I don't really, unless it's for a specific thing like an event or a buddy read or something, I don't really need to be buying a lot more of that. Whereas with sci-fi, I would quite like to build a bit more of a collection, because it's something I enjoy, and sort of early in my reading it was something that excited me, but at the moment it's only a very slim percentage of my reading, so I'd quite like to read a bit more of that. I put down John le Carré. I've just read The Man Who, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and really liked it. I'll talk a bit more about it in a separate video. I'm sort of due a sort of reading update video, and hopefully tonight I'll might start Silverview, so the sort of last le Carré book, sort of depending on how I'm feeling, because I've been a bit up and down health-wise in the last day or so. So if I'm still conscious, then I'll start that. And the other two I put down are Patrick Leigh Fermor, who's been a new surprising favourite this year. I might even try and read The Broken Road this year. I might try and squeeze it in. It might be a nice thing to read right at the very end of December if I've finished Anna Karenina and I've read at least 2 books for Remember December. If I'm in that kind of position in the last week of the year, I might just read this as a little present to myself. And I'd quite like to read some Joseph Conrad next year as well. So I've got Under Western Eyes here. And I was reminded of Conrad today because I've been listening to a lot of stuff about John le Carré just because it's on my mind, with it being Dr. November, so a month dedicated to espionage fiction. And someone was just saying how indebted le Carré is to Conrad, and he kind of references Conrad with some of his character names and stuff, and there's definitely a kind of parallel between the two. And Conrad is one of my favourite writers, so this is the only one I've got unread, and then I'll have to go hunting for more Conrad. So we'll see how that goes, but hopefully I'll get some more Conrad next year, because it's been a while. Actually, no. When did I read Heart of Darkness? I think I read Heart of Darkness at the end of last year. But yeah, it has been a little while since I read Conrad. But there we go. That's the end of the year book tag. And I'm going to leave it as an open tag. So if you'd like to do this, if you're kind of reflecting on where things are at this point of the year, and you think it'd be fun to do this, then please consider yourself tagged and give it a go. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.